Episode 6 Seashell Grand Duchy. As mentioned earlier, spaceship from future Mars made an emergency landing on Sakura Island, and the three musketeers gathered inside the spaceship. This time, let's continue to talk about what happened next on the spaceship. Enenion Songzu's father informed on the phone that the government had prepared for the spacecraft to open the hatch. The helicopter outside the microcosm shield and the fighter jets in the sky have disappeared. The soldiers and police have retreated far away. Instead, outside the cordon, there are more citizens reporting related and watching than the spectators at the rocket launch. The door of the spacecraft slowly opened, and MUI Igwamu walked out of the hatch with a sword in his right hand and stood by the hatch to guard. Enenion Songzu walked out of the hatch, and her father and Enenion Song Yuang and his security team, who were not far away, immediately came to meet her. MUI Igwamu returned to the spacecraft and the hatch was closed again. 20 minutes later, Enenion Song Yulang's exclusive medical team entered the spacecraft with supplies. Enenion Songzu opened the spacecraft's logbook on September 15, 2025 Sakurajime Space Base, landing on a blank page with a ballpoint pen. On the morning of the second day, September 16, 2025, under the careful care of the medical team, Iidalu Jigwon had a good rest and had regained her former vitality. On the third day, September 17, 2025, the Japanese Prime Minister's Special Envoy, military representatives, police representatives, representatives of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, one physicist, 2 parliamentary representatives, a total of 7 people and 5 reporters, accompanied by the base president Chuichiro Enenion, entered the spacecraft for a visit. At the end of the closed-door talks in the evening, the Japanese Prime Minister's Special Envoy and Iidalu Jigwon exchanged a draft of the Japanese government's assistance for the preparation of the Mars spacecraft at the base and cooperation agreement on peaceful exchanges while the spacecraft is at the base. The next day, on September 18, 2025, the two sides exchanged the formal agreement text. September 19, 2025, it was still the seaside park of the base, and the 3 people walked out of the spacecraft. The Japanese army and the security forces of the base provided a line of defense outside the spacecraft, so they didn't have to stay on the spacecraft all the time. On the beach, Enenion Songzu and Iidalu Jigwon listened to the ancient Indian music played by Yui Igwamu, with their feet immersed in the seawater and feeling the waves beating. Does Mars, where you live, have a sea? Enenion Songzu asked. There are also oceans, snow-covered mountains and rivers, forests and pastures on Mars, birds in the sky and wild animals on the ground. It is no longer like the immigrants hiding in closed bunkers at the beginning, Iidalu Jigwon explained. It's just that, especially when the spacecraft is sailing around Mars, it gives people a stronger feeling that Mars is still too small compared to the Earth. In 2 days, the preparation of the spacecraft will begin. I'm on duty here. Let the chairman send a plane. Enenion Songzu and Iidalu Jigwon can go on a round-the-world trip, MUI Igwamu suggested. It would be great if the 3 of us could go together. Enenion Songzu said. Wait until the spacecraft is repaired. Then it will be fine. Iidalu Jigwon said. As long as you can have fun now, then it will be time for you to go back. Enenion Songzu was a little sad. Suddenly, the alarm of the base sounded. The shrill sound resounded through the night sky. The beam of the searchlights lit in the night sky, and the shells of the anti-rocket guns had exploded one after another in the air. The missiles that took off drew an arc trajectory. Hurry back to the spaceship. You go first. I'll cover you. MUI Igwamu shouted. Close the hatch immediately after entering the spaceship. Don't worry about me. A stealth military bomber painted with the logo of Kunlun Continent dived down from the sky of artillery fire, forced its way into the base's own runway, slid to the end of the runway more than 300 meters away from them, unstopped. Iidalu Jigwon and Enenion Songzu were only more than 20 meters away from the spaceship, but the heavy machine gun bullets from the bomber formed a fire net above their heads and between them and the spaceship. They were suppressed and lay on the ground. MUI Igwamu lay down more than 30 meters away from them, observing and crawling towards them. The hatch behind the bomber opened, and more than 20 soldiers came down with submachine guns. Half of the soldiers lay down on the spot, and the other half rushed straight towards them. MUI Igwamu could already see the badges of the Kunlun Continental military uniforms they were wearing. When the soldiers rushed to him, MUI Igwamu suddenly jumped up, and the seven-star dragon mysterious sword slashed down from the air, and a blue light flashed. The soldiers heard a loud noise, and when they turned around, the nose of the bomber had been cut off and fell to the ground, and a raging fire was ignited. Beidalu Jiguan and then any Unsongzu stood up and ran towards the spaceship. Several soldiers who tried to shoot to stop them were chopped down to the ground by MUI Guangwu's sword. Just as MUI Guangwu and the soldiers of Kunlun Continental were confronting each other, an armed helicopter of the Omega Continental State landed near them with a huge propeller sound. 8 soldiers of the Omega Continental Marine Corps jumped off the helicopter. Some of them rushed to the spaceship, and the rest held their guns to their chests and walked towards MUI Guangwu. Seeing that the situation was over, the soldiers of Kunlun Continental State fled in a panic in the direction of the bomber. "Are you okay? We are here to protect you," the Marines of the Omega Continent said to MUI Guangwu. MUI Guangwu said thank you lightly. He walked through the Marines, holding the Longzhuan sword upside down, and retreated towards the spaceship. Beidalu Jiguan and Emion Songzu had already entered the spaceship and were waiting for MUI Guangwu on the inside of the door. Seeing the Marines of the Omega Continent approaching, they had to close the hatch. The Marines of the Omega Continent poured a batch of bullets at the door of the spaceship. Seeing that the hatch was intact, they turned around and surrounded MUI Guangwu. MUI Guangwu was attacked from both sides. They threatened with guns and shouted for MUI Guangwu to put the sword on the ground. Just as MUI Guangwu was waving his sword and confronting the Marines who were flanking him, an electromagnetic pulse shot out from the main gun of the spacecraft. The self-defense forces shouted and threw their guns on the ground. The metal barrels of those guns glowed under, as if they had just been taken out of the furnace after being heated red. MUI Guangwu passed through the Marines who were still in a daze and returned to the hatch of the spacecraft. The hatch opened and then Enion Songzu was waiting for him there. MUI Guangwu called the Minister of Defense. After listening to MUI Guangwu's report, the Minister of Defense also told MUI Guangwu another piece of news. A battleship of the far north snow continent had forcibly entered the territorial waters of Japan and ran aground less than 5 nautical miles away from the spacecraft. Intelligence shows that several other countries have or are arranging to send armed personnel here. Because several major powers have intervened, the original plan can no longer be implemented, the minister said. However, Japan will not give up. We will negotiate with various countries and believe that we can reach an agreement for all countries to help the spacecraft. On September 21, 2025, negotiations between Japan and various countries went smoothly. According to Japan's suggestion, the spacecraft was open for 3 days. Boarders can visit freely in a limited area. Listen to Beidalu Jiguan's 1-hour explanation every day, and ask questions to the 3 people on the spacecraft. On the first day, September 21, dignitaries under the government nominated personnel from various countries, as well as accompanying reporters, were received. On the second day, September 22, celebrities from all walks of life from various countries were received. Politicians, scientists, artists, and press corps from various countries. On the third day, September 23, people from all over the world were received. On September 25, 2025, the representative of the United Nations submitted a peace exchange protocol to the spacecraft, which was voted by the United Nations General Assembly. The protocol stipulates, 1 member states of the United Nations can each establish a base for spacecraft landing on supply in their own territory. The area is managed by the country in the United Nations to assist the spacecraft to ensure the safety and service of the spacecraft. The spacecraft can stay freely at the base. The spacecraft is recognized by the United Nations as the Grand Duchy of HAIBI and enjoys the treatment of a member state of the United Nations. The territory of the Grand Duchy of HAIBI is the deck and hull of the spacecraft, as well as the base stipulated in Article 1.3. The crew of the spacecraft is regarded as a diplomatic personnel sent by the Grand Duchy of HAIBI, and enjoys diplomatic immunity and other diplomatic treatment in various countries. For the United Nations and its member states expect to obtain new knowledge in science and technology from the spacecraft. But the knowledge in science and technology obtained belong to the common ownership of the member states, and the obtaining country is prohibited from monopolizing it. 5. The United Nations and its member states shall recognize and respect the neutrality of the Grand Duchy of HAIBI, and seek help or assistance from the Grand Duchy of HAIBI only on the premise of not infringing on the interests of other countries. After discussion, The three people on the spacecrafts submitted a notice of understanding and recognition of the protocol to the United Nations on the same day. Tsuchiro Nagumo began to be busier than ever. The construction of the spacecraft base in Japan, which his aerospace group was responsible for, received assistance from more than a dozen countries in the world. Large transport planes from these countries brought the necessary equipment, raw materials, a large number of engineering and technical personnel who came to assist, and a large number of defensive equipment to protect the spacecraft from being attacked. The originally planned area was too small, and the Japanese government instructed the aerospace group to expand the building area by 5 times. During the free time of the spacecraft maintenance, Shuichiro Nagumo provided sailboats, private passenger planes and helicopters, Anding, Idaru Guami, Namuemo Matsuyuki and Demu Guamu traveled to various places to their heart's content. Their sailboats set out from the fishing port, sailing along the coast or deep into the Pacific Ocean to visit the islands of Japan. The Idaru Guam's favorite thing is to buy fish at the fishing port, then go to the beach to light a bonfire, drink beer and eat barbecue. The hot spring resorts in Japan made the Idaru Guam linger. Finally, they left Japan and visited the Great Snow Mountain in Kunlun Continent, the Alpine Lakes and Forest National Parks in the Megacontinent. When they returned to the base in Japan, 3 months had passed and the spacecraft was ready. This day was December 21, 2025. The three people spent a week to complete the comprehensive test of the spacecraft. December 28, 2025. The meeting room of the spacecraft discussed future actions. The spacecraft has passed the test and can start sailing, but there are still some serious restrictions. The Idaru Guam introduced the status of the spacecraft. The first is that the time navigation is locked by the Great Wilderness, and now it can only sail in space. How can it be unlocked? Guamu asked. Time travel requires 2 conditions. The first is the unlocking of the captain's control authority, and the second is the fuel condition for time travel. What are the fuel conditions? Is it different from space travel? Nani Sanzu asked. The energy required for time travel engines is very large, and that matter is needed as fuel. Do we need to produce antimatter? And Nani Sanzu asked. No, antimatter is automatically generated by the antimatter fuel system of the spacecraft. But the raw materials needed to generate antimatter are nuclear fusion raw materials, and we need to reserve nuclear fusion raw materials. How to reserve nuclear fusion raw materials? Nani Sanzu asked. The seawater and the surface of the moon are rich in nuclear fusion raw materials. You only need to suspend the spacecraft on the sea surface, or the surface of the moon, or where there are uranium mines on the Earth. The intelligent machinery at the bottom of the spacecraft can collect nuclear fusion or nuclear fission raw materials by itself, store them, and use them for processing. Does space travel also require antimatter fuel? Guamu asked. The Idaru Guam explained. For space travel from Earth to Mars, nuclear fusion fuel can be used directly. For such a purpose, the conventional reserves of the spacecraft are sufficient. However, when flying between stars in the Milky Way or flying at a speed close to the speed of light, the thrust of the nuclear fusion fuel engine is not enough, and the antimatter engine needs to be started. Moreover, even if time travel is not required, the main gun of the spacecraft needs antimatter fuel to fire antimatter shells. In addition to fuel, what else does the spacecraft need to reserve? Asked Guamu. The Idaru Guam said, low-speed space travel uses the principle of reaction force, and the engine needs to eject matter backwards. Specifically, there is no difference between a piece of pork, a piece of stone, and some soil. Just grab a piece of stone in space, and the engine will burn it into plasma and eject it. There is also water and air. For these basic things, except for the controller issuing a warning, we do not need to intervene. Also at the bottom of the spacecraft, the machine automatically collects soil or stones, water vapor or seawater in the clouds, and stores the air at low temperature and liquefies it separately. With these, the supply system of the spacecraft can produce all the materials needed: vegetables, meat, fresh water, steel and plastic. Of course, the artificial food produced by the spacecraft may not be to your taste. It is a good idea to transport vegetables, meat and fish food on the spacecraft. Also, it is a good idea to refill the spacecraft with fresh water if you don't want to drink the fresh water regenerated by the spacecraft supply system. This is the most important thing. You should have said it earlier. Nani Sanzu said, standing up, and said as he walked. I'll call and arrange it now. When will the Huang Tian unlock the Captain's Time Navigation Operation Authority? MUIE Guangwu asked. Before the crash to Earth, the captain of the spacecraft, my father who I mentioned to you, had the authority to navigate time. I was just practicing on the spacecraft. It would be great if my father was here. I'm sorry to remind you of the sad past about the other person. MUIE Guangwu said. BI Dalu Jiguang said, it's nothing. We can go there in a few days and maybe we can find my father's body. Da Huangtian faithfully implements the rules set by its creator. When the conditions of the spacecraft are met and the score it gives to the captain reaches the passing score, it will unlock the captain. BI Dalu Jiguang explained. But this is also hard. I don't know what the conditions are, and I don't know when this old thing will be unlocked. I only know that before that, I can't go back. Is there no second time on spaceship in the future Mars you came from? If there is, will it come to rescue? MUIE Guangwu asked. BI Dalu Jiguang said, as far as I know, there is no second time on spaceship. In fact, our Mars has been trying to imitate it, but it has not succeeded. So countries may be trying to imitate the time travel machine, but it is impossible to succeed. After discussion, the three people decided on the mission of the first voyage, to fly to Mars and carry out Mars exploration. During the journey, travelers are introduced to the history of Earth and Mars from the present day, in 2025 AD to the future year 12,025 AD when the Kitaji or departs. I am looking forward to this mission. These are also what Eneni Ansangzu and I want to know very much. MUIE Guangwu added. In addition, regarding the invitations for this trip, it is recommended to limit it to politicians, scientists and reporters, and let the governments of various countries submit the list. I totally agree. Eneni Ansangzu, can you please trouble your father to arrange this matter? It would be best if your father planned the personnel ratio for each government. Beidou Jiguang said. No problem. I'll call my father right away. Eneni Ansangzu said, walking towards the control console. Just when the passenger list had been finalized and the spacecraft was about to set sail the next day, MUIE Guangwu received a call from Eneni Hanzon Yuang. It turns out that during the war, Kuikir Eneni Han's father and his family once lived in Kunlun continent. When they were defeated and retreated, they lost a son. The child was raised by the villagers of Kunlun continent. When he grew up, he got married and had a daughter. This daughter named Kawagami by Akurin arrived in Japan. Chuichiro Nagumo loved this niece very much. She was extremely smart and worked in Chuichiro Nagumo's company as a physicist. She had just returned from a business trip abroad and missed the registration time for the Mars trip. She hoped to be off the list and participate in this trip. MUIE Guangwu discussed with BI Dalu Jiguang, and BI Dalu Jiguang suggested that in this case, let her stay on the spaceship for a long time as a staff member of the spaceship. Right? On the spaceship, she has a rare environment for physical research, and the spacecraft is also lacking such talents. Just like that, Hishang Bailian dragged her suitcase to the spaceship to report her arrival. Beidai, who was at the door of the cabin, carefully looked at Bailian on the river. Uncalled inside, Miko no Mitsuteki. Come here. The beautiful lady is here. MUIE Guangwu heard the sound and ran over. He saw Kawakami by a cure and blushing in embarrassment. He was at a loss when he saw BI Dalu Jiguang, who was wearing a graceful two-dimensional costume. He hurriedly introduced Kawagami by a cure to BI Dalu Jiguang. He asked Northern Motor Aura to take Kagami by a cure into the room where she would stay first, and he dragged the suitcase for Kagami by a cure and then followed behind.